Hi, I'm Will Gilchrist. I run a little timber framing business called Trengayor Woodworks. We specialise in structural carpentry, heavy timber framing, and anything that's a bit unusual and different. A little workshop just outside Falmouth with me and two guys in it. A friend was doing some carpentry and I went off to help him. My granddad had died and left me a nice collection of these old carpentry tools. And it came to me that way. It was all very informal, sort of casual apprenticeships, and I got really lucky with meeting some great people who gave me opportunities and a chance to do some work and learn from them. The first 5 years of being self-employed was very much about going off to help other people and making some howlers. It's been really nice sort of starting a business from nothing and just very slowly building it up and not having to push to build it or to do lots of marketing and driving, and it's just grown at a really nice rate, very organically. Ross and Andy have been in for the last 15 years, I think, and it's very much a team effort. Whatever we put out is much down to these two as it is to me. The guy who he's a good friend who I first started working with. We did some furniture making and green woodworking, but quite early on he teamed up with somebody else who I then went and worked with for about 5 years, who was a timber framer and who taught me all timber framing. So from the beginning, Trengayor Woodworks has been really about timber framing rather than general carpentry. It's a really nice little niche to be in because there's plenty of demand for it. You get a job and you're busy for 6 to 8 weeks perhaps on that. There's a few other good framers in Cornwall, and we all, I think, collaborate rather than compete too much. There's enough work to go around. There's never been a lack of demand for it. If ever we're quiet, it's because I'm cocked up on the scheduling or something's been cancelled or something like that. Generally, the work has just kept coming. Just some classic examples of misreading a tape measure. Going to a drawing and saying, all right, I need to measure 2350 and measuring 2530, and coming in the next day and the guy I was working for was like, this roof should be like that, and it's like that. Maybe we won't talk too much about the howlers, but you learn from your mistakes and all that. Traditionally constructed timber frame structure is really all about the mortices and the tenons. From a joinery perspective, the accuracy doesn't come from having a tenon that fits into the mortice in the way that it would in furniture making, where you're relying on a very tight fit. Because you're dealing with green oak, which is unseasoned, still has a lot of moisture content, and will then shrink and move and distort as it dries out. You're relying on the pegs to hold the joint tight. When the pegs are banged in, the hole that they go through is offset slightly. So as the peg drives it in, it pulls it up tight. So the tension in the joint and the strength in it comes from the peg pulling the shoulders together rather than the tenon being a really snug fit in the mortise. The thing about an oak frame is that it's a visible skeleton. You see the structure from inside the building. Historically, timber framed houses, you see the frame outside as well, but as weather detailing techniques have improved and modern materials, an oak frame really works best if it's an internal skeleton and then it's completely wrapped up in cladding or glazing. So a lot of timber buildings, current modern timber framing with softwood and a nail gun, you don't really see the timber frame. It's hidden by render or cladding on the outside and plasterboard inside. But with oak framing, you're building that integral structure that holds the whole thing up, and then the rest of the skin is unseen. So you're creating something that has this great visible character and structural capability is also another thing of beauty. I like it when you can see how the joinery is being put together. You see the techniques that have been used. and it's a really nice way to build. We do a lot of stuff off-site, so in the workshop we're not dependent on the weather. We've got all the tools we need here, and we're basically constructing a kit that goes to site on the back of the trailer or on the back of the lorry, and a big frame will go up in 2 or 3 days, 3 or 4 days, even to put up a big house. So having done all the work in here for 8 to 10 weeks, you then go and put up something in a couple of days, that's the best bit of the job. It's so satisfying, just putting it all together. And it's never been together in 3D in the workshop. It's laid up in elevations and different planes. So to see it go together for the first time, the only time it goes together, it's really satisfying, banging the pegs in. Every frame is different in terms of its style. Some are quite elaborate and decorative, and some are quite more minimalist and a bit more subtle. But I think when you walk in and you see that wooden skeleton, I think it has a nice feel, a nice energy to it. With modern weather detailing and good architectural construction detailing, there's no danger of the oak getting wet. And moisture and damp is always a thing that will shorten its life. But there's timber frames around that are 800, 1,000 years old, and they didn't have all that fancy vapor barriers and breathable membranes and things then. They're just well built, well designed. So the longevity of them is infinite. It's really nice making things that have a lifespan measured in centuries potentially, rather than something that, oh well, if it lasts 20 years then I won't be around, so that's enough. The thing that I find works best is if somebody has a clear vision, a clear idea in their head of what they want and the features that they want this structure to have. I much prefer somebody to come and have that rather than be like, oh yeah, we just want an oak thing, can you do something and make it nice? But if somebody comes and we'll sit down and do some sketches, I'll work out a ballpark figure on price. If that's in the budget, then we'll get more into more detailed designing, and I'll start to perhaps take a deposit to cover the drawing costs, work out a cutting list, send that off to the sawmill, and then get a price from them and build that into a fixed quote. And then revise the drawings. I do an awful lot with a CAD program called SketchUp, which is great for both construction drawings and 3D models. There's not always an architect involved, but if there is, then they might take care of building control and all the sort of the insulation build-up and details that we don't get so involved in. Timber takes usually 4 to 5 weeks to arrive from the sawmill. So from that first liaison with the customer through to when we start cutting might be 3 or 4 months, and then typically it might be a month in here, 3 or 4 weeks to build an average size extension. We tend to do more extensions than complete houses. A month in the workshop, and then another, as I say, a week at the most to put something up. And then there'll almost always be a main contractor or a main builder who'll do all the second fit stuff. And then if there's glazing, we'll go back to do that whenever they're ready. That's usually a few months after that. Our lead time's typically 4 to 5 months. If there's a little porch or a small balcony or something, then we can fit things in at short notice. But it's nice to sort of be involved in the project through from the initial inception and be involved in the design and building up those ideas to seeing it completed. I tend to spend a lot of my time in the office, which I don't know. I'd like to be out here more, but it is nice to be involved in the design and to have discussions with architects and engineers about what things work from their point of view. But yeah, I guess I coordinate things in there, and then Moss and Andy do the carpentry. And I'll often come out and try and do some carpentry, make a mistake, and then rush back to the office. In my mind, it's the ultimate material to work with because it grows on trees. Every piece of wood is different and has character. Every species of timber is different as well. You can build in an infinite range of styles, as I said, from sort of rustic and quirky to minimalist and modern. Waste product from the workshop is sawdust, which people come and take to put under their chickens and pigs, or firewood, which we use to keep our houses warm. I particularly like that, that sort of the sustainability of it. I could rant for hours about how we should all be building houses out of wood instead of out of concrete blocks. Maybe now is not the time for that. This building is 45 feet square, which I think works out about 12 metres. 12 metres, about 12 metres. I wish it was 20 by 20. But we moved in here nearly 10 years ago, and I thought, God, it's huge. We're never going to fill it all. And now we're bursting at the seams and could do with a big one. But it's so convenient for other things, and it's nice having a farm as a place to come to rather than in a big industrial estate or something. I like ones that are different and challenging, and I like to be thought of as someone who says, oh yeah, we could try that, rather than, oh no, we're never going to manage that. I like a can-do approach to things. When there are sort of structural challenges, I don't really like budget challenges. If someone says, oh, we'd like something, but we've only got a limited budget, it's nice to have more, to not be constricted by too tight a budget. But if there are things that really challenge you as a designer and as a carpenter to make something work that initially feels quite difficult, there's a big buzz in that. Things where you've got wide spans or particular input from a client or an architect about, well, we really need to keep this space open and try and squeeze a staircase in there, and just where you have to think outside the box a bit and do some research. I sometimes talk to other timber framers and carpenters locally, and have a bit of the benefit of their input, and that's really nice to feel that you can consult and talk to the competition who aren't competition, they're just friends who are doing the same as we do. Generally it's one at a time, but because we might have made a frame that's then going to be glazed, that frame's already gone up, the builders are working on the roof and the second fit stuff, but then I'm starting to think about, have we got enough joy boards for the cover strip that sandwiches the glass on? And then I'm also thinking about, well, I need to finish the drawings to send off to the engineer for the job that's going to start after the next one. The timber's in the yard for the one that's going to come in next week. So it's one at a time, but I've usually got 3 or 4 in my head, sometimes more. And it's just that cyclical thing of, always thinking a little bit ahead and trying to not get to a point where we're starting and the wood's not here or the drawings haven't been approved. But I think you can give a better service if you've just got one thing going on at a time, especially if you're a small team like we are. To have too much happening at one time is just asking for trouble. We have a few guys who might come in if we get really busy, and sometimes we have work experience or kind of people who've called up and said, oh, I'd love to learn a bit more. So I was very lucky to get for people to give me opportunities, and I try and pay that back a bit. And if someone comes and they show a bit of potential or some interest, then give them a chance, and it's nice. We've had quite a few guys come in over the years and do a bit. Customers. It's not the customer's fault. It's your fault. It's not their fault. It's down to you to manage their expectations. And instead of just saying yes to everything, which perhaps I used to do in the past, to say, that's not going to be possible, but we can do this. Often it's expectations to do with time, and maybe a lack of appreciation for the external factors that, no matter how organised you are, can derail things. But usually in here is kind of peaceful and tranquil, and the carpentry happens. These guys do a great job doing that. And it's all of the stuff that happens on emails and phone calls that causes the tension and the stress. And someone's just called and their bell was pulled out, or someone called and those are the bits that I find the most challenging. Or when a timber lorry's delayed because of a ferry strike or something like that, and you're sitting here tapping your fingers waiting for something to happen that you've got no control of. A bit of a tough nut to crack, because you don't need, as I found, you don't need to have gone to carpentry college, because a lot of the skills you need as a timber framer are quite specific to timber framing. The best thing you can do is try and weasel your way into a workshop and just ask if you can come and learn a bit, get involved somehow. There are some good courses being run at the Weald and Downland Museum in Sussex, or there's a company in Wales called Hewn Wood who run timber framing courses. And a week or two of money spent doing one of those courses is a really good investment, because you learn so much more than you can anywhere else, unless you can get into a workshop. And most workshops aren't going to let you in if you know nothing, but if you've been and done a course, then you'll have a good start and you'll be much more useful. Persistence and just badgering people, and I think turning up somewhere and saying hi rather than sending your CV and doing it a bit cold. Framing square, plumb bob, spirit level, combination square, mortise chisels, rebate plane. The nice thing about timber framing is that really you can build a house with tools that fit in a wheelbarrow. You don't need a lot of fancy kit. And because timber frame houses have been built for decades, centuries, you don't need all power tools. Obviously, in a modern application, you want a good circular saw. A chain mortiser is probably the most expensive thing you might buy, but is worth every penny because it makes cutting mortises so much easier. But it's very easy to suddenly think, oh well, it'd be nice to have this as well and that as well, and suddenly you've got a big workshop that's full of kit. But that's the joy of carpentry is using good quality tools. They make the work a pleasure. So as soon as you can afford to buy good tools, it's always a good investment. When I get an order confirmed, a job confirmed, I'll put in confirm a cutting list with the sawmill we use mostly in Normandy. We're cutting from very well managed, sustainable woodlands and forests that have been run that way for centuries. Slightly in contrast to the way that we've managed our oak woodlands in Britain. We've had a much more forward-thinking policy for replanting oak woodlands in France. So the timber will come from the sawmill. It's basically, the tree has probably been rested on the ground for about a year before it's been milled, but it's still green oak, it still has a high moisture content. Sometimes if it's really come very quickly from the sawmill, when you plunge the mortiser into it, you actually see the moisture in the bottom of the mortise. It's that fresh. As it slowly dries out, you're talking about, as a guide, an inch per year. So a 6-inch beam will take 6 years to dry out. So it's a very slow process. That can be accelerated if frame is finished quickly and the second fit's finished and the heating's turned on or the wood burner's lit. The quicker that the frame dries out, the more exaggerated the cracking and the distortion and the shrinkage as the timber dries. From our point of view, it's infinitely preferable if frame dries out slowly over time. But you can't tell somebody who's just spent a lot of money on a new extension, oh, don't turn the heating on for 5 years because, the cracks will get bigger. The nature of green oak is that it's unseasoned, and as it dries out, and a lot of the character comes from the cracks and the checks and features that you see in the wood. It presents its challenges, particularly with detailing, glazing and designing ways to minimise the negative effects of that movement that the oak has. But it's very much part of the character and the charm of an oak frame as well, is that you're dealing with bits of tree that look like bits of tree and not something that looks like it's come out of a mould or been too regularised and machined ahead of being worked. Oak, it's the traditional vernacular timber framing timber. But we also do quite a bit with Douglas fir and larch, which are very viable softwood alternatives. And they have the added benefit of being a lot less dynamic. They don't move as much as they dry out, more stable. So for some applications, they're actually a better choice than oak. They don't have quite the same strength or durability, but they have plenty of both. And if things are well detailed and well executed, there are very few things that I wouldn't build in Douglas fir or larch that I would build in oak. You can interchange them. It's very much down to budget and the aesthetic of the finished result. It's hard not to love oak. I think it's maybe in our genes a bit to think it's the king of the timbers maybe. And oak trees are great trees to have in forests and woodlands. The supply of timber has been difficult as a result of Brexit and then through COVID. It slowed right down, prices went up hugely, as is no surprise. A lot of oak logs are being bought up by American and Chinese markets for production in their own factories and furniture workshops. It doesn't affect me directly in that I don't have to source the logs, but the guy in the sawmill in France who's trying to source the logs has, we've seen it a little bit in the quality of the timber that's arrived, and sometimes I've said to him, this is really not as good as I need it to be. He's a great guy, I trust him to always get the best quality logs he can for us, but I also know that the very best quality logs are better used for furniture making. And in timber frame building, you can tolerate knots and grain patterns and slight defects far more than you can if you're making windows or interior furniture. My top tip would be all about the amount of time you spend designing something. I've been a bit of a convert to using a CAD program that really allows you to almost design and then build something as a 3D model, and you can overcome all the challenges of design. How you're going to make it work, how are you going to lay the joinery out. You can present it to the customer and say, this is what we're going to make you, are you happy with this? All of the potential problems get resolved at that stage. So when it comes to making something, you've kind of already made it on the computer. I know it's perhaps slightly contrary to the romantic way of saying, oh, we did it all by hand and we just use chalk lines and plumb bobs. The only way that you can design challenging things, to my mind, is to build it entirely on the computer first, and then you translate that into a real life thing. And I enjoy that process. I enjoy designing something on the CAD model and then bringing it out here, and the guys build it off that, and it's worked really well for us. I used pen and paper for a long time, and was an ardent fan of pen and paper. I was like, oh no, I like doing it the old way, and pen and paper's great, And there's a definite pleasure in drawing something, on the drawing board and doing it that way. And a couple of the architects that we work with still very much focus on hand-drawn, and certainly for initial design ideas, that they have a very artistic hand that really conveys much more than a computer can. But I did have I sort of taught myself to do the CAD thing, but I thought, somebody advised me on this program, I'll have a go and see what it can do. And within a week, I was like, wow, this is so much better. If I make a mistake, I'm not throwing up paper and starting again. It's pretty obvious what you can do, but you can't do with pen and paper. It sounds a bit dramatic, but it's revolutionised what we're capable of in here, I think.